Jon. You listening?
I gladly walk across the desert with no shoes upon my feet. Death with you the last bite of bread I had to eat.
I would swim out to save you in your sea of broken dreams. When all your hopes are sinking, let me show you what love means. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? I would whisper love so loudly every heart could understand. And love and only love can join the tribes of man. I would give my heart's desire so that you might see. The first step is to realize that it all begins with you and me. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love
Good morning and welcome to Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Reverend Jon Coffee, a community minister affiliated with Tennessee Valley, and I'm here with a really good friend of mine, Bonnie Blosser, who is a friend of mine and a colleague of mine from my home congregation in Lawrence, Kansas. Bonnie is the former director of lifelong learning at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lawrence, Kansas. And she now lives here in East Tennessee. And for today's service, she and I got together and we wanted to do something, joint. And we decided that in our awkwardness of trying to learn how to talk to each other in person again, that would probably be a good topic to talk on. So we're doing things a little bit different this morning. The sermon is more of a podcast, talking heads kind of thing. Don't know how well it's going to work, but we're glad you're here. And for our welcome this morning, we say, whatever the faiths you have known or the flags of your heritage, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. And whether you came here today on little feet, walked in briskly, ambled in, or rolled in, you are welcome here. We welcome you to our worship this morning.
We light this candle for justice, for beauty, for peace. This is the living symbol of our flaming heart.
Love is the spirit of our church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our great covenant.
You know, there's a story behind every hymn, and I'm going to start telling you little stories about hymns when I think they're interesting enough to share. The tune for this one, one of our favorite hymns, Here We Have Gathered, the tune is actually from the Genevan Psalter, which was an early Protestant hymn and word book. It's from 1543. I just think that's interesting. It doesn't sound that old to me.
Here we have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all
The story I have to share today is an ancient Buddhist wisdom story, one of the Jataka tales, adapted from a version by Dharmakari Nagaraja. And the story begins a long time ago with 4 princesses who lived in a grand palace in a distant land. Now they were pretty curious girls, so when they heard about a tree of breathtaking beauty, can you imagine the most beautiful tree in the world? They longed to see it. But this was no ordinary tree. It was a magic tree. Would you like to know why? Now this tree was known as the kingshuk tree, and it was said that it was at the far edge of the royal forest, but none of the princesses, even though they had spent much time in the forest, had ever seen it. And they were so interested in it that they went to the palace gardener and asked him to take them to see this amazing tree. And the gardener said, "It would be my pleasure, your highnesses, but the kingshuk tree is a magic tree. People can only see it on their birthday. The rest of the time it is invisible. So I will only be able to take you one at a time, and you will each have to wait until it's your birthday." I wonder how long it is until your next birthday. How long would you have to wait to see the kingshuk tree? And so it was on the oldest princess's birthday. It was a bright spring morning, and the gardener and the girls set out to find the kingshuk tree. And after walking for a while, they came to the edge of the forest where the gardener said that it grew, and the princess saw a tall tree standing apart. But the gardener said he could see nothing, so she knew that this was indeed the magical kingshuk tree. And she stood entranced by the beautiful tree. Its green leaves were unfurling like sparkling emeralds, and the princess was filled with joyful energy. Now, as they left, the gardener asked her not to talk about what she had seen so that she wouldn't spoil the tree's magic for her sisters, and she agreed. That seemed fair. As spring rolled into summer and time went by, the second eldest princess celebrated her birthday, and in turn the gardener took her to find the kingshuk tree. And when she saw it, she gasped, for there was an explosion of deep red blossoms glowing like rubies. And the princess smelled the perfume of the magic flowers, which filled her with a great sense of happiness. Imagine the most incredible flower scent you can. And of course, the gardener asked her too not to discuss the tree until all the girls had seen it. When the gardener brought the third princess to see the kingshuk tree on her birthday, the hot summer days were turning into autumn, and the princess's eyes widened when she saw its branches crammed with luscious purple fruits which hung from the tree like amethysts. The magic tree was so enticing that she felt as if it were feeding her with its goodness and generosity just by her being near it and experiencing it. And once again, the gardener asked her, like her sisters, not to talk about the tree until all 4 princesses had seen it. Finally, as winter chased the last autumn leaves from the trees, the birthday of the 4th and youngest princess finally arrived. And now the gardener took her too to visit the kingshuk tree. Now she asked to be taken at night because she wanted to see it in the moonlight. And sure enough, its silvery branches, wet with dew, looked spectacular, and they sparkled as if they were laced with tiny diamonds. And she felt as if the mystical tree were wrapping her in its warmth and magic. Can you imagine the sparkles? The day after the youngest princess's visit, the 4 girls went together to thank the gardener for taking them all to see the magical kingshuk tree. And they were relieved that they could discuss it amongst themselves at last, and the oldest princess said, "I will never forget that beautiful tree with its tiny leaves shimmering like emeralds in the afternoon sun." I wonder if you can think what happened next. The second princess said, "But sister, you must be mistaken. The kingshuk tree was covered in huge ruby red blossoms, and its perfume filled me with great feelings of happiness." The third princess insisted, "Oh no, sisters, you are both quite wrong. The kingship tree was heavy with luscious purple fruits, which sparkled like amethysts." And then the fourth princess cried out, "Well, sisters, I think you must have seen different trees. The kingship's branches were covered in threads of glittering dew that enchanted me with their magic as they sparkled." Now, by now, the girls were beginning to think that maybe they had been tricked and that they had actually seen 4 different trees. So they asked the gardener what was going on. And the gardener laughed and said calmly, "Your highnesses, you have indeed each seen the same kingship tree and experienced its magic, but it was dressed for the season of your birthday when each of you visited. To truly appreciate the tree, you need to visit it in all the seasons, which is, of course, impossible because of its invisibility." And the princesses laughed. They had forgotten that each of their birthdays fell in a different part of the year and that, of course, the tree would change with the seasons. It was a magical tree, but in that way, it makes sense that it was like other trees. No wonder it had looked different on each visit. And the girls realized, too, that the only way they would be able to discover more about the magical kingship tree was by listening to and learning from each other and anyone else who had been lucky enough to see it. What we first see may not always give us the whole picture, right? In fact, I suspect it never does. And a wise person knows that to discover the truth about anything, they must learn from other people's insights as well as their own.
Statement, 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 question.
Agreement.
Reassured statement, confident statement, confident statement, overly confident statement.
Question?
Elaborate defensive excuse.
I've-hearted agreement.
Insecure statement, distracted statement, absurd statement.
Clarification question?
Panicked, ridiculous explanation, quick, meaningless, comic, non sequitur.
Fake laughter. Fake laughter.
Accidental compliment of physical characteristics.
Pleased response.
Shocked continuation of meaningless comic non sequitur. Relieved laughter. Relieved laughter.
Superficial compliment.
Self-assured agreement as denial. Exaggerated statement. Exaggerated statement. Grossly exaggerated statement.
Clarification question?
Extremely exaggerated elucidation.
Mental compliment with accidental double entendre.
Confident laughter. Confident suggestive proposition.
Violent denial.
Aghast repetition as question.
Disgusted violent denial.
Defensive incriminating implication.
Authentic retort.
Aggressive childish insult.
Disbelieving rhetorical question.
Aggressive childish insult.
A stunned silence.
Aggressive childish insult.
Defensive childish response.
Aggressive childish insult.
Defensive childish response.
Aggressive childish insult.
Defensive childish response.
Okay, attempted condescending conclusive statement.
Brilliant, scathing remark with literary allusions and long-term devastating eschatological implications.
Pathetic self-revelation.
I'd like to say a little bit about this song too. It's number 1023 in the Teal hymnal. It is something that we're familiar with, but do you ever read the bottom of the page? It's a very interesting origin. The words to this song come from the Greenham Common peace occupation in England in 1983. It was a group of women who were gathering to protest the implantation of a nuclear site in their little village in England. The melody is a Quaker round, and we're going to do it as a round. We'll sing it a couple of times first so you can sing along with us. Would you like a pitch?
Pitch.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all our voices and all of our visions, with all our voices and all our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Bridges between our divisions, I reach out to
Bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our visions and all of our visions, we're friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our visions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, with friends we could make such sweet harmony.
Friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Joy. May we remember all those who need our prayers, our thoughts, and our meditation. May we remember those who are filled with joy or filled with sadness or filled with uncertainty. Grant us the ability to be there for them. A prayer for them in looking back. The presence has walked with me. I could ask for nothing more. The Holy One has given me green meadows to laugh in and clear streams to think beside, and untrodden paths to explore. When I thought the world rested on my shoulders, the Holy One put things into perspective. When I lashed out at an unfair world, God calmed me down and then drifted into harmful ways. God straightened me out. The Holy One was with me all the way. I do not know what lies ahead, but I am not afraid. I know the Holy One will be with me. Even in death, I will not despair. I will be comforted and supported, and though my eyes grow dim and my mind dulls, you continue to care about me. Your touch will soothe away the tension in my temples and my fears will fade away. I am content. In life, in death, in life beyond death, you are with me. All through life, I have found goodness in people. And when this life ends, I expect to be gathered into the ultimate goodness of the Holy Presence. Remember all, love all.
Good morning. Welcome to TVUUC. My name is Claudia Presley, and I'm the Director of Administration. Today is a Generosity Sunday. That means that all contributions that come in that are not marked as a pledge go to the General Operating Fund of TVUUC. The way you can give is to go to tvuuc.org/give, or you can text give to the number 73256, type in TVUUC and the amount that you would like to give. Once again, thanks for joining us and have a blessed day.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the living for today.
Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religions too. Imagine all the people
So a few weeks ago, Bonnie and I had this great idea. We were chatting. I can't remember where we were chatting and what we were doing. I think we were working together on some project. And we got to talking about, that I was working with Tennessee Valley and that I had a preaching date coming up, and around about that same time, we had this idea that, well, let's get together and figure something out to do for the service. It would be so cool to collaborate on a service together. And I remember, Bonnie, you came over to my house, and getting ready for you to come over, I like cleaned my house, because I was like, oh my goodness, it's the first time I've had somebody in my house since I've gotten vaccinated, and I'm so excited. And I remember, we were having lunch, and I was making something simple like a soup and sandwich or something. And I just remember thinking, I don't remember how to have small talk. I don't remember how to talk to somebody. And but you were so gracious, and you came over that day, and that was kind of where we started. We kind of were both kind of.
It was. We were both kind of feeling a little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
We know each other, but we're in this different space now. I mean, your comfortable space, but I had never been there. And yeah, just learning how to communicate and learning how to talk again.
Right. And so, and I think that's kind of where we picked up on it is, well, how about that be the topic for the service is, how do you talk to people, especially in the context of coming back to some sort of in-person or figuring out what the world looks like post-COVID or still during COVID while we're still facing, rising cases and that kind of thing. What are the strategies for talking to people? And thinking about it not just in terms of, small talk, but in terms of heavy things. We're getting ready, especially at Tennessee Valley, to start the process. We have been in the process, but it's really starting to put, our nose to the grindstone of figuring out what it looks like to reopen, and figure out what that looks like in our community. And, the thought kind of freaked me out because it was like, I know that there's going to be people who I love, people in my community who I'm going to disagree with. And we're going to, how do you engage with that? If it's hard enough to make small talk with somebody that who's over in your home, how do you have these difficult conversations?
Yeah, we haven't had them for a while. Our conversation muscles have become a little flaccid, and we're out of practice. And now's a good time to renew again, and with good habits and thoughtfulness.
And so, go ahead.
Oh no, just as we re-enter and come together again.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, we were talking about that at lunch, and you brought up the work of Loretta Ross. Do you want to say a little bit about who she is and the work she does?
Yeah, I heard her on a podcast by Dan Harris called, his podcast is 10% Happier. And it was back in February. And she is dynamite, actually. I really enjoyed listening to her. She is a visiting professor at Smith College, and she is a activist and has gone through some trauma herself. And what she said really spoke to me about calling people in instead of calling people out. And it really got me thinking.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that, so you shared that with me, and I listened to it as well. And one of the things that got me was the percentages that she talked about in terms of people you disagree with or people who are aligned the same way you are in terms of culture, in terms of politics. And so she talks about the 90%, your bubble, the people who are closest to you. And, then moving out, the 75%, the people who don't quite use the same language, the people who might think a little bit differently than you, but have some of the same values and have the same kind of goals and same kind of culture as you.
Yeah, and they can be your allies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think this is what one of the things she was pointing out is you don't want to, you want to bring them in and have them be your ally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the further out you get, the 25 percenters are people who, you maybe don't have as much in common. And there are folks who just their worldview is so radically different. You might be able to maybe stand in the same line at the airport, maybe, or not. And then even further out are the 0 percenters. And so what was interesting to me is the percentages is not like the percentages of people who are going to think like you. It's the percent that those people are similar to you. So the people who are 90% similar to you, the people who are 75%.
Exactly. And I think that's really a good way to think about, I mean, I just haven't thought about how people are along a continuum, and that what I say to them and how I speak to them matters where they are on that continuum.
Yeah. Well, and that continuum is not just, that continuum applies to our families, it applies to our friends, it applies to our church, it applies to our congregation. And I think that's the piece that really intrigued me, is that, I think in congregations sometimes we like to think of ourselves as being, that 90% closely aligned, we're all on the same page, we all know exactly what we're doing, we all have the same goals. And that may or may not be the case. And
right.
Yeah.
We understand that with family, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could have a close-knit family, we can love each other dearly, but sometimes we know we're not aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still hard. It's hard to have conversations. It's hard to have hard conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is. It's hard to have conversations with, it's hard enough to have conversations with people that we're closely aligned to, much less conversations with people who we're not as closely aligned with, people who, I think what makes it difficult is that sometimes there are people who we want to maintain some sort of relationship with, and the greater the difference there is, the harder and more daunting that can be.
Exactly.
And so, with all of that in mind, the point of the service, how do you talk to people, an exercise program for how to talk to people. We kind of came up with these ideas for a toolbox or exercises that we can do, and then exercise equipment. So do you want to talk a little bit about, because this is mostly your list that we kind of collaborated on together. Do you want to talk a little bit about these, these exercises that we can practice on how to talk to people?
I think one of the things that we all know, but when we're in different situations and conversations, it may not be in our forefront, in the forefront of our thinking when we're having conversations, is that words really matter. Words really matter. And that if it's a language that you're comfortable using, a jargon kind of language that other person that you're speaking to may not align themselves with, that could turn them off immediately. It could create a barrier to your really connecting in that conversation. And so avoiding extreme words and negative words and words that shame or really can have an immediate negative impact
Mm-hmm.
depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we just don't think about that. And when we're in a conversation with somebody and they say something to us that just slaps us awake.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that Loretta Ross said was just to pause for a second and take a deep breath and go, I beg your pardon?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you paused and said, what did you say? That was the seed that went,
Yeah.
that was the seed that was planted.
Yeah.
And that seed is important. So
It
just
is.
going there.
Remembering their humanity. Remembering that this is a human being who I'm speaking with. And I may be getting angry with them because our blood pressures are rising and we're disagreeing on this point. So what does kindness look like in that moment?
Just not engaging in hateful words. I mean,
Yeah.
they're seeing, they may feel threatened. They may feel attacked. Just stepping back and maybe even just saying, let's just step back from this for a moment.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't how I want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to be like this with you.
And that's a compassionate thing. Like it, and I think it appeals to a hope of like something different, like saying, or either saying explicitly or through not so many words, this is not how I want to have this conversation. This is not how I want to be. Is, I think that the flip side of that is I can imagine a different way that this relationship turns out. I can imagine a different way that this conversation turns out. And it's positive and it's beautiful. And that's not the direction we're headed right now.
Right. Right.
But I also think too, it could look like recognizing when somebody just needs a break, recognizing when you need a break, and just recognizing that there's humanity at all levels of it.
Well, and they are seeing what they are seeing.
Yes.
They're seeing what they are seeing.
And you're seeing what you're seeing.
And you're seeing what you're seeing.
Yeah. So with all of that in mind, with, how to talk to people, I don't know if we've actually come up with anything groundbreaking here that, we didn't already on some level, I think, know. Is there? Yeah.
I think that's it. I mean, I think we've known it. We maybe have exercised these muscles before, but not for the last year and a half or so. And it's time to go back out and do some work and be face to face with people and to engage with people and be in community, not over a screen in community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take time.
And as you were talking about that, the image that came to mind is like, there's the really fancy gyms where like all the very physically fit, beautiful people are all exercising like in the front window and everything. And then there are the gyms that are like the community gyms where, it doesn't matter where you are in terms of your fitness goals or what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to be healthy, if you're trying to be a bodybuilder, if you're trying to be whatever, if you're just trying to, get some strength back, we're all going to be kind of doing different things. And especially as we come back together, that's the image that comes to mind is, some of us are just ready to jump right in and, like talk to all the people all at once. And others of us are going to take time. And, with different COVID restrictions and different health restrictions, things are going to look different.
And yes, and that's another thing. We're going to have to be fluid, right?
We're going to have to be fluid.
We could be in lockdown again or something. And,
yeah.
Going to have to be kind.
We're going to have to be kind.
And take care of ourselves.
Yes.
Take care of ourselves.
Yes. be kind to each other, and be kind to ourselves. So with that in mind, thank you so much, Bonnie, for joining me for this service. It's a little bit different than a normal sermon. I don't know how well it works, but it's an experiment, and we're being kind to ourselves and to each other, and hopefully modeling a little bit of this of this how to talk to people, how to engage.
Yeah.
So.
And we're welcoming feedback, aren't we not?
We are. We have a coffee hour just after this. Are you going to join us for the coffee hour?
I don't know. I can, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a Zoom coffee hour after the service, and everybody is welcome to join. So we'll post the link in the chat on Facebook and on YouTube if folks want to join.
I will be there with my coffee.
Me too. Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be kept by love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, and spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free.
In Ross's words, I believe in holding people accountable, but choose to do so with grace and forgiveness as opposed to anger and punishment. I have never led a blameless, mistake-free life. I had to learn in my 20s how to forgive myself for making little mistakes because I knew I would make bigger ones later. And so if I can feel that about myself, why can't I feel that about others? Because there are other people as complicated as I am.
And in that spirit of complication, in the big and small mistakes that we're going to make, we go out into the world. Our worship has ended, but the real work begins. Go and love the world.
Let people living in all lands declare that fear and pain are gone. Rise above differences and stand in love and understanding one.
As our last act of worship, I invite you to join us for our virtual coffee hour immediately following the service. If you can't join us for that, I invite you to call, text, or email, or if social distancing allows for it, go and greet your neighbor in person.
I gladly walk across the desert with no shoes upon my feet. with you the last bite of bread I had to eat.
I was sweating